Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Monday, August 5th. Derek Van Riper, Saris here with you on this episode. We dig into some things that happened over the weekend, where the money went. Big weekend for Fab. We had some top prospects promoted for the first time. We had one brought back, happened to be on the same team. We'll talk about some of the big bids that happened there. There was a little bit of pitching available in certain instances. If you were in a league where a pitcher had to pitch this season to be in the pool, you were in luck. If you're in a league where injured players could be picked up, you probably were not in luck over the weekend. So we'll dig into some of those happenings, get some mailbag questions here. And we had a no-hitter. Blake Snell threw a no-hitter against the Reds. 21 swinging strikes, 11 strikeouts. He's been great ever since he came off the IL in July. A 41-10 strikeout to walk ratio now, a .55 ERA, a .55 whip. The only two pitchers who've been better by the player rater over the last 30 days, Dylan Cease, who's also thrown a no-hitter, and Hunter Green, who has not thrown a no-hitter, but they've put up great ratios. Both of those guys have more wins than Snell during that span. But this quote says it all. Blake Snell after the game, they can't say it anymore. Complete game, shutout, no-hitter, leave me alone.
Yeah, I guess we've been saying that, some of his innings, that's been the long thing that you pointed out, is that some of the concerns about his innings and going deep into games has been overblown. Big win for Stuff Plus for these three guys, too, that you mentioned. Those are all big stuff guys. I did struggle a little bit when I was ranking to where to put Blake Snell, just because the projections for him were so good based off the stuff, and there was such a rocky beginning. But this is who he is. I think he just has little bad stretches, and underneath the hood, he's a really good pitcher.
That is who he is exactly. I think we are teetering closer to the Blake Snell has an option this offseason, and if he continues to pitch anywhere near the level he's pitched at since coming off the IL, he will probably opt out and go back onto the free agent market, because the guarantee of 3 or 4 or 5 years might be out there, as opposed to just pitching on the second year of a 2-year deal and staying in San Francisco. I think that's the trajectory he's on right now. If I had to predict it as of August 5th, I think he's going to continue pitching well enough to make that the better option. And then he could be maybe the best free agent pitcher on the board, at least on a shorter deal.
Yeah, that's a good point about who's on the market.
Because Max Fried will be a free agent, but he's dealt with a couple of injuries again this year. So as much as I am a believer,
sort of package, right?
Yeah, with a little bit, it's like the results get there and they're a little more consistent. You don't have as wide of a, you don't have as high as a high, but you don't have as low of a low on Max Fried with ratios. But I think you trust Snell just a little bit more from a stuff perspective at this stage.
Yeah. One thing that I'm just sort of struggling with is that will he go on the market? Will Blake Snell go on the market and be more attractive after he puts up 100 innings? I mean, the part of the risk was that he sometimes puts up 180 and sometimes puts up 100, 120. So then he goes out and puts up 100 innings, no matter how good they are. I feel like that's still the risk. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the tough part. He comes off the season or the career best since like 2018. First time he'd been up and even above like the 120 range. And the deal that just happened is the one that happened, right? So you're raising a good point. Like after another season of durability concerns, which that was the concern I had last winter. I wasn't worried about Blake Snell, 5 and dive, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's something we talked about all winter. I was worried about Blake Snell, adductor strain, Blake Snell, various things that have put him on the IL over the years those have cost him more time. And that hasn't gone away. That's a fair point to make too. But if it's injury risk all over the place, what I think is probably going to happen is just a bigger AAV and maybe something that's still
bigger than 30.
Creative. Yeah. I think you go a little higher on AAV and you keep the kind of flexible options built in, and maybe he gets sort of the the pitcher equivalent of the Carlos Correa treatment. Goes back, he does a little better, but it's still not quite the mega deal you would have expected with better health throughout his career.
I'm still a little surprised he won't get the deal that like Robbie Ray and Kevin Gossman got after, they'd had sort of pop-up seasons. Like 4 and 100 or 5 and 100,
Yeah, the Ray deal was 5 for 115.
115, yeah.
With an opt-out after 2024. So Robbie Ray could opt out if he wants to, too.
Jeez. Giants are going to have a weird offseason.
They always do.
I do think that Matt Chapman will opt out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is when you're on the wrong side of 30, you generally need to exercise an opt-out if you think there's any chance you can beat the current deal. Because if you wait another year to hit free agency, it's even less likely you're going to beat it.
Yeah.
Time works against you so hard at that point in your career. So, yeah, congrats to Blake, though. I mean, getting the haters to probably quiet down for a little bit after that no-hitter.
I could see Chapman signing an extension. They kind of need his defense. It would be a wow, he has options for both of the next years. What this crazy ass contract. They'll just bump him up to like, 20, 25 million or something, maybe 2 for 50 or something instead of 2 for 36, which is the options.
By AAV, this pitching market's going to be kind of packed with old guys, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander. We know they're going to struggle to come up to the 40 plus million AAVs they were at previously.
Alex Cobb.
Yeah, I mean, Cobb unfortunately has one of the worst injury histories out there. Does Gray have an opt-out?
List?
He just signed. I think you're looking at the wrong list. Yeah, Gray was 3 for 75 last offseason. So he's signed for 2026.
What are you looking at? Sport Track or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Snell can opt out. Garrett Cole can opt out. What do you think? What do you think about that? Garrett Cole could actually opt out. I mean, he's been hurt a lot this year, and he hasn't been himself. And he's got
36 million. How much does he have left if he stays in?
4 years left. So he's got to beat 4, averaging 36.
After this season? No, I don't think he does, actually.
And he'll be 34 in September.
He missed time with general body soreness.
Yeah, I again think that was from an illness. I don't think that was an aging problem where everything just hurt. I think he was sick. But that injury before that, the nerve-related problem in his arm, that ultimately is going to lead to a lot of questions. If Garrett Cole had another 200 inning season this year, then I think it's a totally different conversation.
I think Robbie Ray opts out. He just has to be 1 and 25. He could. Don't you think he could get like a 3 and 70 or something?
Probably.
Yeah, I think so. He's 32. Charlie Morton is just either going back to Atlanta or retiring. I feel like that's.
Yep, he's pretty easy to read at this point. I think.
Giolito, Eovaldi could do okay.
Burns will be a free.
Oh, it vested, I think. So he gets 20 million.
That's the thing that changes everything too. Corbin Burns is out there. He's a free agent this offseason.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Kikuchi will be out there, and then a lot of second tier.
I think Kikuchi gets the $100 million deal.
I think there's a lot of similarities between Kikuchi, especially because they did this in Toronto with the improved command, and Robbie Ray. I think.
Oh, except that Kikuchi's already 33.
Yeah, so then you have to shorten the deal because of the age and how the modeling is going to work on that. I think it's maybe 3 for 75. Yeah.
Nice.
This is the problem, though. Like, this is the problem is you put people that stare at this stuff a lot together, and they're going to spit out similar numbers, and the formulas are going to spit out similar numbers. And that's why it's like, oh, of the places that are offering me the same number, which one do I like? It's really not any more complicated than that for Kikuchi.
Yeah, I think so. And I do have that piece in my back pocket that's, is it collusion if the computers did it?
That was off the top of our heads. We spend a lot of time together. We look at a lot of the same stuff, but it's kind of sad in a lot of ways. And that's
Shane
where
Bieber is 29.
coming off a pretty big injury.
Wait, so it's Tommy John, right?
Yeah, did he have Tommy John? Did he have brace? Did you ever get a
Oh, so he's
confirmation on
gonna
that
get the what's the like 2-year deal special that you get when you get, they give you the first year, they kind of give you like 2 and 40 or 2 and 50.
Yeah, like 5 to 7 million the first year, and then like the big number in the second year.
Yeah, or they just spread it out and just pay for, get 2 for 40, and they pay in 20 the first year to get you for less than the second year.
Yeah. If you were, but so like hypothetically, if you're in the position of Shane Bieber, he'll be 29. So he's 29 now. He'll be 30 in May. Do you take a 1-year deal instead to hit free agency sooner? Because again, you don't want to push that back any more than you have to.
Well, he is a free agent, I think.
That's what I'm saying. Like, instead of taking a 2-year deal, and having your age 30 season be the first of a 2-year deal,
just sign like a 1 and 10 and try to just be healthy. That's the bet on yourself version, right?
The bet on yourself version. Like, which one are you more comfortable with?
Knowing him, I could actually see the 1 and 10.
Yeah. So there's some decent pitching out there. It's got plenty of question marks around it.
Bieber's been a Cleveland Guardian. He's probably been salivating at free agency. Not that Cleveland's a bad place to play. It's just sort of a little bit like Tampa-esque, where it's like, you're not going to get paid there, most likely.
Yeah, you generally are not going to get the big deal from Cleveland.
On some level, you're looking to get paid somewhere else.
So we had some mailbag questions today. One of them actually connects to a pending free agent. Is Max Scherzer a drop in 12-team Dynasty leagues? This is from Reds and 4 in our Discord, and Reds and 4 is contending for a title as well. I mean, arm fatigue is the cause of Max Scherzer's latest move to the IL. So even if it's only a couple of weeks, let's say it's a relatively quick stint, we're still at the point in the year now where that could be the middle of August.
Yeah, it could be the end of August.
August 15th is the earliest possible return date, I think. So I'm not particularly optimistic. And while I would be surprised if Max Scherzer just stopped and retired this offseason, I don't know if I'm necessarily clinging to the idea of holding on to him in a dynasty league at this point.
I think the fact that he wasn't traded at the trade deadline is a major sort of red flag, basically.
He does have a no trade clause, though.
Yeah, but
it just complicates things. Like you're saying in the sense that
it complicates things, but
like a contender generally,
like
knocking down the door.
Yeah, the Orioles, like if he was vintage Max Scherzer and they thought they could get real Max Scherzer, the Orioles would have called, the Dodgers would have called, But what you see is 92.7 on the fastball right now for Max Scherzer. That's down 1.2 from last year, and that's down basically 2 ticks from when he was at his best. I mean, he's never been a stuff god, but in 2021 and 2020, he had 110, 111 stuff. Even in 22 and 23, his fastball was still above 100 in stuff plus. This year, his fastball is 77 stuff plus, 83 overall. Like, I hate to overemphasize one stat, but that sort of brings together why teams might say, no, thanks. For us, I'm sure he could still put up like 3 9s. I feel like a 3.9 ERA like he's had so far, and a decent whip, okay strikeouts. I feel like he could do that. But the number of starts that I give him over the rest of the season, the over-under is like 5.
Yeah, probably could count them on one hand. I was thinking 4.5 or 5 would be where I'd probably put the number if I was making something like that. But the interesting thing here, too, is you look back at these last 3 seasons now. You go back to even 2022. 145 and a third for the Mets. It was 152 and 2/3 last year, split between the Mets and Rangers. That's probably the higher end outcome for Scherzer in future years too. And those pitchers are valuable, but then that's still like almost a best case scenario.
I think last year is the best case scenario you have going forward in the next 3 years.
Yeah, because that was a 3.77 ERA and a 1.12 WHIP with more than a strikeout per inning. It was a major home run problem
150
last year. Yeah.
But I would, if I was projecting him, I'd probably project him for, a 3.8 ERA and next year for like 100 innings, 120.
Then the offshoot of this question is for people out there that are thinking about this. Are you interested in taking the flyer on someone who hasn't debuted yet? Let's say Brandon Sproat, Mets prospect, just got bumped to the AAA. Let's say Sproat's out there or Bubba Chandler's out there, upper level pitching prospects we haven't seen in the big leagues yet. 12-team Dynasty, the threshold to be a consistently good, valuable pitcher is
It's
pretty
a
high.
12-team Dynasty. I missed that last part.
Do you want? Well, it's a question in redraft too. It's easier to drop them in redraft.
It's way easier in redraft. I thought this wasn't even. I was like, okay. I was like, this is a slam dunk. We can move on. But Dynasty. I mean, you always you're like, oh, couldn't you trade him to a contender for even a small prospect? But
or if you are a contender, are you just looking for someone else who helps you more? Because you can either burn the roster spot and just wait it out with Scherzer. You can swap to somebody else who's similar.
Okay, if he is a contender, I would say maybe you hold on because that could be a useful piece for your end game. All
right. You think even with the deterioration, the stuff is still good enough where you might prefer Scherzer at the end of the year if he's back
over like
some of the other options
over a lower. We're it's not like you're not.
Yeah, September starts from Scherzer versus Adam Mazur.
We're not talking about Mizorowski. We're not talking about the top end pitching prospects that are still down there. You're talking
about back end fillers that are currently fringy to get in, or prospects that haven't debuted yet. Those are probably your alternatives in most situations.
I could go pick up Landon Knack maybe if you're lucky. He's probably, maybe someone dropped him when he went back down. It's 12 teams,
Right.
I would say if you're anything lower than fourth, then because you probably shopped him and nobody wanted him. If you run out of IL spots, go do something else with your time.
You can definitely run out of IL spots. That is a real thing that actually happens in leagues that have the limits.
In my 12-team dynasty, I have a Reese Olson question where it's he's on the IL, but I have Jake DeGrom, Drew Rasmussen, and somebody else on the IL. My IL is full. So I'm just staring at Reese Olson. I'm trying to trade him to, rebuilders.
But further testing at least turned up okay on Reese Olson. But yeah, if you're kind of caught in the middle right now, he's someone that I would think
at least he's young and
flip.
Pitches in a good park.
There should be a rebuilding team still interested in him because the reports on his shoulder are good enough to make you think that this won't be a major problem for him. But
it is hard. I think 12-team Dynasty is maybe one of my hardest leagues. It's the one that I bug you about the most. Because I'm just I don't know. These are all good players. What am I...
Yeah, but this is what AutoNew does too, and I think at least the difference in AutoNew is that the chances of Max Scherzer being a very inexpensive player are very low. He's probably
he's probably like a $25 Max Scherzer, and then you're like, yeah, that's easy drop or an easy rental to somebody else.
Yeah, I'll if I can't find a taker, I cut him. I have salary cap space. I can take a couple interesting flyers. I can move that around. It makes more sense. Leaning more towards a drop in a 12-team Dynasty league. If you're not contending right now and you can't flip them. If you are contending, probably a little closer to a hold. Situation matters. Reds in 4, a little more in that contending bucket right now. Here's a question for you. What is behind Tanner Houck's recent struggles? I mean, Tanner Houck was phenomenal throughout the first half. And this is a multiple person question through Discord. I had a text question about this over the weekend too. Results still look really good overall for the season, right? It's a 3.09 ERA, a 1.14 whip, 123 Ks in 134 innings, a career best walk rate for Tanner Houck. This is very good to see. The home run rate hasn't been a problem, but more recently, he has started to come down from that. What do you think the explanation is? 6 earned on 8 hits last time out over 5 innings against the Rangers, 4 earned. It was at Colorado a couple starts ago. I think he kind of brushed that off. He had a rough start against the Padres in late June, where he gave up 7 earned and 4 1/3. Had a short start against the Yankees just after the 4th of July. So, what are you seeing in the more recent outings from Houck?
There's a few things that come to mind. One is I always check out the velocity, and there's a little bit of a velo dip. He was getting 93s, even some 94s early in the season when he was feeling froggy. The last 4 have gone 93.4, 93.6, 93.0, 92.5. So a little bit of a velo droppage. I also see that his slider has become a little bit more depthy. And in the last 3 starts, it has maybe an inch, almost 2 inches more drop than it did early in the season. That can be important because drop plays one way against same-handed. It should make it, I think, a droppier slider should be better for opposite-handed. Because if you think about it, the frisbee sliders, the sweepers do poorly against opposite-handed. So, he could be doing it on purpose, but the results haven't been amazing. And then the last thing that I just have to think about is just this idea that he made a tweak that is novel in the industry, along with all of Boston, in cutting the fastball usage so much that you have to think that there might be sort of, second order, like people getting used to it, just like everyone's read the story now. Every advanced scouting, every team knows, okay, he's not going to throw the sinker much. He's throwing it 30% of the time. We have to maybe sit. Are we going to sit slider? You know what I mean? I wonder if some of those strategies are sort of those responses are filtering through. One thing that is interesting is that the slider, while it's changing in shape, and what I'm saying in terms of maybe some people sitting it, the slider has been a negative pitch type value for the first time in 5 out of his last 6 starts. So something's happened there. I think they might be sitting slider, or the slider's getting worse, or both. And I think that the response, though, is fairly obvious. Is like, okay, if you're going to sitting slider, here comes some sinkers.
So you think there's a counter adjustment that they can try to employ? And I'm sure the Red Sox see it and are trying to diagnose it. I have no doubts about that. But while you look at his matchups on a start-by-start basis, you're like, okay, is he back in the streamer bucket? Is that the proper way to handle Tanner Houck? We've talked about the difficulty of pitching in Boston. It's hard enough when you have to deal with that home park. If we can't use you for all of your home starts, it starts to chip away at your value really fast. I mean, the last 8 starts, 5.23 ERA, 34 Ks in 43 innings, 20 walks. So the walk rate's kind of back up, and the home runs have come back mixed in there. I think they've been kind of scattered into about 3 starts, though. So it's not necessarily every time out there he's giving up homers, but we're starting to see those mistakes get crushed a bit more often.
And where do you draw that line when it comes to being careful with him? So he has his next start is at home against Houston. Well, okay, I think if I'm being careful with him, that's Fenway and Houston. That's a no. And so the next start is versus Texas. Is that a no? If that's a no, then I have to go all the way to August 19 at Houston.
Well, if you wouldn't throw him at home against Houston, you probably wouldn't do it on the road. Houston's right on that borderline.
August 25th versus the Diamondbacks at home. And even that could be sneaky hard because the Diamondbacks are actually not a bad offensive team.
They're the best of the 3 offenses you just mentioned by WRC plus. They keep
I don't even
down.
understand that sort of intuitively. It doesn't make sense to me. But yes, I knew you were going to say something like that.
But
How does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? There's no way that makes sense. If you're asking me who those best offense of those 3 would, I'd go Houston, Texas, Arizona.
Yeah, that's how I would have ranked them too if we hadn't looked into this a couple weeks ago. I've been pleasantly surprised by the Diamondbacks this year. The other strange thing about the Diamondbacks as a team, and I realize Corbin Carroll is a large part of where the stolen bases come from. They only have 75 steals. The makeup of
with McCarthy coming back up.
Yeah, they're mid-pack. They're tied for 14th in stolen bases as a team this year. They're just not the team I thought they'd be as a lineup. And then you start to kind of think about Ketel Marte doesn't run.
They're not running.
Yeah, they're just more power over speed. That's not what I expected them to be. They got a 424 slug. They're 6th. The Diamondbacks are 6th in Major League Baseball in slugging.
Well, maybe the losing Walker is a little bit of a problem for them.
It could be. I don't know if it makes them a team you would target, but maybe you just fear them a little bit less.
So anyway, back to the Tanner Houck thing. I liked him coming into the season. I still like him. I think I'm going to ride or die.
You're going to push him through. Okay. So in this case, you're talking about still using him against an Astros lineup. It's been kind of a fringy top 10 lineup. Still good. Not an easy walkover. They don't have Kyle Tucker. That's a key.
If he does poorly against Houston, though, versus Texas starts to be a problem. I mean, Houston should be one he can handle, I feel like.
Should be. But also, like, what's going on with the Rangers lineup this year? It's not the same Texas we saw a year ago.
Same level, yeah.
They've been missing guys. It's been a key part of it, too. But they've been a bit tricky. Like a team that we've probably feared more than we should, at least by the results up to the first 4 months of the season. But thank you for the Tanner Houck questions.
What is the 1 week, 2 weeks sort of thing? So 5 to 12 is 1 week. So he won't be a 2-starter anytime soon either. He could be a 2-starter the next week. It could be versus Texas at Houston next week. So you could sit him just for this week just to see as a sort of a bellwether. And then you'd get a 2-start week from him, maybe against Texas and no, it won't be a 2-start week for him. So 2-start week the next week would be at Houston versus Arizona. But you could sit him versus Houston just to see what you've got. I could see that. Anyway, yeah, good question.
Yeah, I'd say put him in the SP3, SP4 treatment bucket right now, where he's not just the automatic start the way he might have been in the earlier part of this season. Had a pretty direct question that was asked in a more polite way. Ethan in Discord wanted to know, why does Randy Vásquez not work with 3 fastballs, a decent off-speed breaking balls, and good location numbers? Or the way I would ask it, why isn't Randy Vásquez better? I mentioned him maybe a month or so ago as someone that I kind of liked in the second half because he could possibly narrow the pitch mix a little bit, use his better stuff, and maybe get some better results. We know Petco as a home park is great. The Padres are a team that keep trying to get better, so those win probabilities are probably up a bit compared to where they were at the beginning of the season. But to Ethan's question, why doesn't Randy Vásquez get better results?
I wonder if he throws the fastball too much. The fastball, the four-seam fastball is his worst pitch, and he still throws it 31% of the time.
It's very weird when you have 5 other pitches you can throw.
Yeah, I wonder if he couldn't benefit from a sort of Bostonization, He doesn't locate the cutter as well as he locates his other fastballs. So maybe you'd be like, okay, replace some four-seamers with cutters. Well, not if you can't locate them. And the last thing is, he strikes me as someone that has poor command. The walk rates have been up and down in the minors. The location plus numbers are good. I did get some feedback from someone who worked for a team that said that he thought he agreed with my point that maybe internal location models are better than public ones. And I will say that here at Pitching Plus headquarters, we are working on that for sure. Then there are different ways to do it. But I would say too many fastballs and inconsistent command. That would be my guess. But still someone that I watch a lot. I watch his starts. I circle him. I put him in my fab list. He's always sort of circling around. I've definitely had this kind of a question in my head myself. And I'm sorry that I don't have a more definitive, better answer, but I do think that he should have what it takes. And so I think if you're not getting into great counts, having a good slider and good curveball and good changeup is a little bit less useful. And that's why you see really good swing strike rates in the minors and you haven't seen it in the majors yet. I think that it has to do with count leverage and fastball usage.
Yeah, I mean, for his career now, it's up over 100 big league innings between the time with the Yankees and now the time with the Padres. 7.7% swinging strike rate for someone that was consistently in double digits coming through the Yankees system. It's a bit of a puzzle for Randy Vásquez, but I think the 4-seam usage would be a good place to start. Lowering that maybe would open up a few more interesting possibilities for him skills-wise if they decide to go that route with him in San Diego. Had a few other Discord notes to pass along as a follow-up on Trey Sweeney from BitCloud. It's a random note since you mentioned him on the episode at the end of last week. There is a significant chance that Trey Sweeney's power looks played up because of homers he hit in Albuquerque, which has more extreme park factors than Coors. 7 of his 13 homers at the time of this writing were hit in Albuquerque this year. He had a 3-homer game and a 2-homer game in the same series earlier this year. The PCL just continues to foil us, but thank you for sending that note.
I think
Cloud.
I think we noticed that a little bit on air when I was kind of gushing about him, and then it was like, oh, he has an 86 WRC plus. At least I remember while I was like looking through all this line, I was like, why did he get traded? Oh, okay. Yeah. WRC plus is park adjusted, and so it takes the wind out of some of that power sales, but still a kind of player that I would trade for if I were the White Sox. And I think, better than some of the other ones, like better than Brendan. Like, I'd rather have Trey Sweeney than Brendan Shoemaker. There's a but like, I don't know why they traded for Mike Soroka. Like, they had 1 year of team control on Mike Soroka. What's he going to do for you? You knew you were going to spend half the year waiting for him to get healthy, and then I don't know.
I think it was the kind of flyer, not unlike signing Eric Fetty,
right?
With a lot less proof to go on.
Him.
Right,
yeah.
We'll give him starts. If he pitches well, we'll get something back in a trade. We have vacancies. He was very interesting.
But what was the trade for? Because they got a bunch of nothing for it. It was Shoemaker and Soroka for what?
That was the Aaron Bummer trade, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So basically, the Braves said, "Here's a bunch of guys we can't keep on the 40-man. You have room on your 40-man, so you take all these lottery tickets."
Get anything out of Bummer? Is Bummer hurt? Oh, he's pitching.
Yeah, Bummer's back.
He's pitching okay.
Got a 210 FIP.
Wow.
Yeah, that trade was Nicky Lopez, Braden Shoemaker, Jared Schuster, Michael Soroka, and Riley Gowens was in that trade.
What a ridiculous trade. What a ridiculous trade.
I mean, if you have 40-man spots, you got to fill them somehow.
I guess, but it just reeks of those fantasy trades you get near the trade deadline where someone's just trying to consolidate and he just gives you all your non-keepers.
Yeah,
like,
just clicking a bunch of names.
Yeah.
I've made trades like that before where like there's either a salary cap or a roster limit, and I just tell the person, like, look, these other 3 names I'm clicking on, I'm only throwing them in because I can't keep them at all. If you like them, great. If you don't, I don't think they're a value add. They're just, you're the first shot at them before they're waiver guys.
Yeah, and Auto New, you can loan people the money to pay for the players. So sometimes you will get the little clickety action where it's 5 expensive players that none of them you're going to keep, but he's loaning you the money to keep to pay for them. So you might as well.
Here, take these upgrades off my hands. But no, thanks for that message, BitCloud. We got one from Pyre. Every time I play OTP, Ben Joyce never works out. The game just hates him. My last run, I played as the Angels, and Nolan Shanuel randomly gained 65 game power and became like an 8-time MVP.
He'd be so good.
Yeah, I mean, 65 game power would change everything for him.
I guess I could see a little bit why the game might not like him, because what we have for Ben Joyce is 34 innings with a 20.8% strikeout rate. It's very bizarre in terms of aligning stuff to output. And I think it, to some extent, has to do with being a power sinker that's going to reduce home run rates and reduce BABIP. And that's what Stuff Plus has given us, is a little bit of a insight into, run suppression. Batted ball suppression. I think that adding the sinker this year could add to more strikeouts, because he's going to throw those same-handed guys. You see the whiff rate, it was 10% last year, 9.9. It's up to 12.2. You see way bigger swing strike rates in the minors, way big strikeout rates. I do think he'll eventually get there. I think he's a closer. I think he's the closer now, but I could see why the game might not like him.
Are we sure that Ben Joyce isn't another Brusdar Gratterall?
There are similarities there, for 100% sure. What it's not Ian Cano, but the same sort of deal where it's like, is he going to have enough strikeouts to be the closer? But I think that organization is so bereft of talent, honestly, that Bruce Dark Gratterall would close for the Angels right now, right? So, long term, it's a concern. So if you're thinking about, you've bought him, like I have a bunch of I have two $1 Ben Joyces in Autonew that I bought like a month ago, and I've got him cheap in a lot of places. It is worth thinking, like, maybe I will trade this in the off season, if there's a package that appeals to me, because I'm not sure about his long-term viability as a closer.
Yeah, I don't think it's a lock. I think there's a lot to like, but the Gratterall comparison and example to me is more like, hey, this sometimes what looks like electric stuff is really good, but it doesn't translate to the strikeouts that we expect it to. And maybe that's
only one of the closest comps, though, in the end is Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, that's another guy where it didn't quite go the way we wanted it to from a fantasy perspective. For a little while, it looked like it was working as a starter to begin this year, but
he also had some really good years in the bullpen. So
yeah, but even those years, 14 saves, I think, was the career high from 2019, 12 saves last year, split between a couple teams. It never quite took off the way you would think, where he was the guy getting 25 or 30 saves.
I've convinced myself that's the comp.
Fair enough.
Well, just because Gratterall is very unique in terms of what he does. Like, he's short arms the ball like nobody else, and tiny extension, and high velocity. He's a bizarre guy, but yeah, it's the same phenotype for sure.
But we're just wanting more from a strikeout perspective, especially. Let's take a look at where the money went this weekend, because I thought there were a lot of interesting names picked up, especially in the 12-team RotoWire Online Championship. The most added player of all was someone that you got on a few teams, Jeffrey Springs. And you were saying before the show you weren't necessarily that excited to add Jeffrey Springs. So why did you do it then?
He's a 2-star pitcher this week. So
he's chasing 2 starts.
But no, I paid 30 something in one league. So that's not a streamer. A streamer for me is like $11 out of 1,000. So I paid more. I guess what I'm hoping for is a little more velo. I hate to be so velo specific, but 89.9 in his first start is not good for Jeffrey Springs. And he was not really a stuff guy before. He's always been a command guy, but in 2023 and his first year in Tampa, 2021, his stuff did pop. Like, he did have an uptick in stuff, and his fastball, 4-seam fastball, went up in velo with Tampa those years. And so 93.7 was 2021, where he was in the pen and starting. And then it was down to 91.7, but he had that great season in 2022 based off his command. I'm just not sure the command's going to come back. I just think there's a lot of questions. How long are they going to let him pitch in the games? He went 3 2/3 before in his first one. What's his strikeout rate going to be like? What's his fastball velo going to be like? So it was, I would say, more out of desperation than anything.
It was 76 pitches, though, so pretty close to a normal sort of workload. They may be a little careful with them, but I don't think it's a constant source of, oh no, and he doesn't have an opener in front of him, he's not gonna be eligible for wins. I don't think it's that bad, but I do think the velo really needs to come back because of where Springs lives on that range. Like, he can't really afford to be a tick or two less than what he was when it was all kind of coming together for him a couple of years ago before the injury popped up last season.
Do we have any sub 90 quality pitchers? Let me see here.
For this year,
Tyler Anderson, Marcus Stroman. That's
Ben Lively.
That's where you're shopping. I had the qualified guy on, but without the qualified guy, Ben Lively, Jose Quintana's right there. I don't know, man. It's a tough place to live.
Brady Singer, Bailey Ober. They're a little lighter on the velo side.
He needs to get there.
Right. He's still below that level.
I want to see like 90.5. I want to see some 91s on the gun. Like, I don't know. 89.9 is it's a tough place to be.
He might be more of a 2025 guy. Jeffrey Springs might be able to get it all back in the offseason. Sometimes just getting back, getting through a couple of months, then going into your offseason where you're not rehabbing anymore, that ends up being the thing that sort of unlocks everything going back in that right direction.
We also just to the desperation point, like we're getting close to yet another record of pitchers used.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're at like 750 or something. Last year, the record was set. It's always year over year. The record is set like at 850. So that's the desperation that you'll feel in different leagues where there's not even any top prospects coming up anytime soon. Like I'm not going to save Fab for Jacob Misiorowski if he never comes up.
Well,
that's
yeah.
Second mention of Jacob Misiorowski on the show.
You're thinking a lot about Misiorowski.
Well, how many big pitching prospects are left to wait for? I mean, is Job ever going to come up?
It doesn't seem like they have to do it this year. They could just bring him up for opening day 2025. And because of the time he's missed this year with injuries, it's not, any sort of developmental malpractice to do it that way.
Yeah.
So it's a short list. We looked at it a couple weeks ago, and that's how we landed on David Festa, who was a re-add for a lot of people.
Who was definitely, I added him again too in a couple of leagues. Yeah.
Trying to go down that road again. Homers have been a problem for him in the brief time that he's been up with the Twins thus far.
I'm hoping it's a 2-star week, but it is one of those 2-star weeks where you're nervous because it's a young guy, right? And it's like, he could be a 2-star. He lines up to be a 2-star week, but is he only up for this start and then somebody else is going to get healthy and take his start later in the week?
That's always possible. I think what helps is that they have a doubleheader on Friday. Ooh. So it's a little more of a stretched pitching group situation. So
they have 8 games this week?
No, they have Thursday off, but they have a doubleheader on Friday.
Okay. But doubleheaders are tough to plan for as an organization.
This is pretty weird though, because Cleveland is also off Thursday. They could have just rescheduled that game for the 8th instead of just putting.
Don't question the schedule makers. That is a hard job.
There has to be some reason why they decided to play a doubleheader that day.
Maybe you also get to ask the teams. There's teams can say no to certain things.
Right. That day off might have been really valuable to them for some other reasons, of course. So who would you rather have had between Springs and JP Sears, who is also a 2-star pitcher this week? He's got the White Sox for his first one. That was pretty appealing. Then he's on the road against the Blue Jays on Sunday for the second one.
I don't like to play JP Sears on the road. And so I generally stay away from that. He, for some reason, has a higher ERA at home this year, which annoys the crap out of me. And actually for his career, that's great. Great. Thank you, Sears, for working against my narrative. That is just beautiful. I think for me, I'm okay with Sears. And if you can get it right, you get it right and you do well. I just feel like it's really hard to get it right with him. And with Springs, I was like, if there's like a percentage that one's better than the other for this week, maybe it's really close for them this week. But if there's a percentage likelihood that one of them turns into a guy I keep in my roster, it's higher for Springs.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. We've seen a higher ceiling from Jeffrey Springs in the past, but I think if Springs fails to get that velo back, they end up being a constant,
the same guy,
constant source of streaming and 2-star conversation.
Bellyache.
Use them at home, try to stay away on the road, or pick your spots carefully on the road. That's just sort of the way that it goes. A bunch of relievers got picked up this weekend, as they often do. I saw Victor Vodnik, AJ Puck, because Paul Sewald got removed from the closer role this prior to the weekend. I think it was Ryan Thompson that got the save Friday with Puck pitching in the 6th. But then on Sunday, Thompson was in the 8th, Puck was in the 9th, and that makes a little
Thompson
bit more sense.
One was a reaction to a save that Sewald was blowing. Mm-hmm. So it was more instructive that Sewald then pitched the 6th or 7th in the next game that they were winning, and Puck pitched the 9th, because that's when they had it all set up like they wanted to.
Right. Everything had been kind of re-racked for that particular matchup.
Puck is the closer. He's the big winner so far, although I do like Faucher, and I hope I'm saying the name right. It does look like it's a French last name. I like him. I think he's got a little bit of a command bug up his nose, and he's a little bit more like the breaking balls are better pitches than the fastballs. But it's not like he's zero velo wise. 96 is only a little bit above average. It's not plus, but I think that's enough velo. And I don't know. I just don't like Nardi as much.
All right. So you're Faucher over Nardi in Miami still. What are you doing with Victor Vodnik? We've had Rockies closers occasionally pop up, provide enough value. Stuff looks like it's pretty good. It's close to a strikeout per inning this year. The home run rate's not off the charts bad. Like all things considered, this looks pretty good. Last 30 days, especially sub-3 ERA, sub-1 WHIP, 5 for 5 in save chances, and 13 Ks in 13 and a third innings. So this looks like it plays maybe as a bottom tier closer, despite Vodnik having to pitch half his games in Colorado.
I think it actually. I probably should have maybe put some bids in on him and try to get him in some places. The interesting thing about a Rockies closer at this point in the season is that I wouldn't want to necessarily draft a guy that he's given you a 137 whip and a 3.7 ERA. Like those are still innings that are stacking up against other closer innings. So those are going to be bad, right? You know what I mean? Like those are bad numbers for a closer. And that's Coors related, of course. But this point in the season, you have a lot more teams out there that say, well, my ERA and whip aren't that great anyway. So just give me the saves and the Ks. And so in that case, I think Vodnik becomes a better bet and a better fit for certain teams.
Yeah, I think if you had previously been using Jason Foley as a source of saves and you've been disappointed by the lack of saves in the last 30 days or so, this is probably a good 1-for-1 swap.
Jeez. That you were at the bottom. One thing that projections might be missing, and one thing that is nice about this year's version of Stuff Plus is that we have altitude adjusted Stuff Plus. And so that's why you'll see a 121 Stuff Plus for Victor Vodnik. And that might not be factored into most of the public facing projections that we have. So they're all saying 4.8s. And I'm going to take the hard under on that projection for Vodnik. I think with that kind of stuff, he can still manage a sub-4.
Right. Maybe there's I don't know, something between a Daniel Bard, Houston Street grade capable closer here with Vodnik.
Yeah, he's slightly more Bard than Street in terms of stuff, but yeah.
Right. But that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Believe it or not,
but also
had the
some
run.
command foibles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as bad as Bard. He's legend level.
Did you come away with any shares of Coby Mayo or Jackson Holliday from the weekend?
I did not. I have some draft and hold Mayos that I'm not even necessarily playing just because of who they're up against on my team. Mayo does have outside strikeout rates. Aside normal strikeout rates, I'm not denigrating him overall as a prospect. I'm just saying there could be a possibility he comes up and struggles with making contact in his first attempt of the league. We just saw, Holliday, who was a can't miss guy, come up and struggle. So, Mayo was not somebody that I was going to drop $150, $200 on at this point in the season. Holliday, on the other hand, I feel really kind of angry about right now because in all of my fab leagues, I've been trying to stash him over the last few weeks, and I've had him on my rosters and then been like, oh crap, I got to do something else. Or like someone's gotten hurt, you know what I mean? So he's been on and off my rosters as like the last bench guy all summer. If he breaks out now, I'm going to be kind of angry, but obviously good talent. And I think slightly ahead of Mayo in terms of making adjustments already and smaller strikeout rates in the minors. I think he's more likely to take a full-time job, whereas I think they have contingency plans if Mayo doesn't work out.
Yeah. The related move for a lot of people is to drop Jordan Westburg because of the broken hand too. So it was just replacing a really good middle end corner guy with one of the high ceiling literal replacements, right? And Holliday's homered twice since coming back up. They've kept him in the 9 spot so far. I don't think that's necessarily locked in for the rest of the season. If he's performing, they'll move him around accordingly. But I think you're right. I think Mayo, seeing big league pitching for the first time does bring more risk. I wouldn't be surprised if the strikeout rate was bad enough where he ends up being the guy that goes back down at some point if Westburg makes it back. I haven't seen a timetable for Westburg, but usually a broken hand tends to be about a month for a hitter. It's just going to take a little time for that to heal. So they're both going to get a pretty good look. Mayo started all 3 games since debuting on Friday. I think he hit 8th in 2 of them and moved up to hit 6th against the lefty that they saw on Saturday. The would you rathers for these guys, I mean, it's like, even with the downside we're talking about, the swing and miss that Coby Mayo has, even with Holliday faltering the first time he was up, the ceiling is high enough where you probably want these guys in shallow leagues, all the way down to like a 10 team.
Especially in 12-teamer, yeah.
But the 12, yeah, I went after Holliday this weekend in one league. I got him. I think the projections are very light. I put this in the Discord, and people were generally on the side that the projections are kind of like on the correct level. The Bat X has a 245, 325, 383 on Holliday for the rest of the season. I'd be surprised if he doesn't beat that. That would be,
especially on the power and 380 slugging for him. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that ended up with a 271, 431, 477 as a 20-year-old at AAA. 10 homers, 8 for 9 as a base stealer. I think it's going to click for him in these final 2 months. Like I'd be surprised if he doesn't beat that projection. And the floor on that projection is still good enough to be the last player on your bench in just about any size league.
Yeah, I've got a fascinating situation on the other side. This is the league that I text you the most about, the 12-team Dynasty. I have Westburg, and I have Morel, and I have Mookie, so I can probably just wait for Mookie to come back and just make that switch. But of course, other people in the league have come calling for Westburg, saying, "Hey, I'll give you this, perfectly wrapped Marcus Semien." And some other pieces for your Jordan Westburg, and to some extent, it's tempting a little bit. I mean, because Westburg is 25, right? So there's a chance that we're seeing something very close to his peak right now. There's a question, I think, of like how many bases would Jordan Westburg steal next year? I mean, we got 2/3 of a season from him, and he stole 6. So if the strikeout rate comes back a little bit more next year and the batting average goes down a little bit, where's the growth going to come from? Mm-hmm. What's he going to do better next year?
It's a fair question, right? Is this the near peak performance, or is there one more gear? I mean, he lowered the K rate this year in the larger sample. That bodes well. I think where the improvement comes from, what if he walks more? He's always
if he walks more, then he'll probably turn more of those whiffs into strikeouts. So he could maybe get up to 10 and 25, right? 10% walk rate, 25% K rate for Westburg.
Yeah, so the rest of the season,
you have OBP go up and batting average go down.
I feel like a lot of times at this point in the year, the rest of season projection slash line is going to come up pretty close to what the 2025 slash line is going to be.
100%.
Those are pointing toward what we see is what we get.
Yeah.
And if you feel that way, okay, then you're talking about
with a reduction in power a little bit.
Right. Like a 22 homer, 10 steal guy with a slightly better than average batting average in a great lineup. So the counting stats get a bit of a boost.
Yeah.
Who is that player in the pool right now among middle infielders?
It's not really. I don't have a great comp for it. Is it Ketel Marte-ish?
Even Marte. I don't know if he even
Marte
runs
has better batting average, right?
Let's see if our trusty player rater can help us a little bit with some similarly valued players. So Westburg's been worth $16 in a 5x5 league, 12x12, or 5x5, 12-team league. Other $16 players: Brandon Nimmo, that's less average and a little more speed. Corey Seager, usually expect more average.
That's like sort of age related, and
yeah, I don't think that's a good comp. We've got Ezekiel Tovar, is on here.
Wow, that's so weird. I love that because Westburg is so much my player and Tovar is so much not. And look at them coming up with the same value.
Yeah,
I would bet on
really,
Westburg's skills going forward, though. I think.
Yeah, I think the thing with Tovar that we'll probably have a deeper conversation about in the offseason, we're doing like a position review or something, is that ballpark can protect his flaws a little bit.
But also make it so that he's not going to improve them.
That's possible too. But also, he's only 23, so he can still get better.
True.
He's not a finished product.
So that's 2 years younger than Westburg. So there's just sort of baked in improvement.
Yeah. So I'm trying to keep an open mind with Tovar because of where he plays specifically and being a little bit younger. They got him to the big leagues so quickly that he might not be at his peak. As much as I like Jordan Westburg, I can tell myself the story that this is more or less a finished product. But to get back to the comps, I mean, I think we're looking at like a Willy Adames type player, a fringy top 100 guy when it's good, a little bit of batting average downside. Like if the Ks go up, the average could dip a little bit more than expected and everything could lag slightly. But I think he's a fixture for them for the next couple of seasons, right? You think he's pretty safe as an everyday guy, isn't he?
I think so, yeah.
Because
it is also interesting that a 230 ISO and 18 homers from a righty in Baltimore. That there's a little bit of pressure on, it's a decent max EV and a 12% barrel rate, 6.5% last year for Westburg. So I think to some extent, my question is what the power is.
Here's the other way he could improve. Here's what I'm looking at. It's a small sample, of course, because any season numbers against lefties, just it's chopping it up pretty small. Jordan Westburg has a 29.2% K rate against lefties. He's under 20% against righties. He's better against same-handed pitching. He has a 134 WRC plus against righties and a 113 against lefties.
And projections would reverse that. You don't believe in reverse platoon splits until you basically have 1,000 plate appearances in both handedness buckets.
Right. But if he is able to sustain what he's doing against righties and do what a righty normally does against lefties, which being as good or better against them, that's the area where, Jordan Westburg had one more gear. That's where it would come from.
Yeah.
I wonder why
I'm always tempted. I'm in second. I'm always tempted when people are coming to me with this kind of offer. I want to win and keep that player.
Yep. That's the classic have your cake and eat it too, isn't it?
Exactly. 2 timelines.
Did you see any interesting drops in your leagues? I saw a bunch of injured guys and players that were optioned, right? I mean, Mike Trout, his season's over. Heston Kjerstad's down at AAA again. Westburg with the broken hand. I could see maybe picking him up for the final couple of weeks. That he might be a good ad for 2-3 weeks in September whenever he's back. But Trevor McGill getting dropped. Devin Williams is back. That's not really interesting. Luis Garcia is not getting saves anymore in Anaheim. He's behind Kenley Jansen in Boston. He made sense as a cut. Like, was there anybody that got dropped? You were like, yes, I'm definitely interested in this player ASAP.
Thairo Estrada got dropped in the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational. He's on the IL for a wrist sprain. But it's not a new injury. It's the old injury.
Yeah, flared up on him, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't sound like a long one for me. And if you're dropping him a few days after he's gone on the IL, there's always the chance that he comes back off the IL like within the week. That's just a name that I'm monitoring because you mentioned a lot of people got dropped or hurt, but they were longer term injuries.
Yeah.
With Thairo Estrada, it's like he could be back in the next week. So you always want to try and catch someone where you're buying them before they come back. So it may just be as quickly as this next week that you're back interested in picking him up again. Some David Hamilton drops. That's just, I guess, is Sedan playing over him at short?
I think the way they were using Hamilton last time I looked was in more of a platoon role. Yeah, that's still happening. He's not playing against lefties. That's been pretty consistent. I think he's got one start against lefties out of like the last 6 that they've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's even getting
they
occasional days
also-
off against righties.
Yeah, he sat on the second against a righty.
And they did play Rafaela at short that day.
Played short, yeah. So I guess it's hard this is weekly leagues that we're mostly looking at. So I guess it's hard to keep him around if you don't know. Somebody just dropped Hunter Harvey for Lucas Erceg. Which is funny because Hunter Harvey just got the save. I say funny, and I'm not throwing any shade on this owner because Hunter Harvey is the Jackson Holliday of my stash list. I've had him in every league, waiting for him to finally become. I thought he'd be the closer in Washington 2 months ago, and I don't even know that he's the closer in Kansas City now, even though he got the last save. In fact, who do you think is the closer in Kansas City?
I think it might just be a committee. I don't know if they have a fixed closer right now, and it could be they're a good enough team where taking your shots on each of them might make sense. But yeah, Harvey got the first save they'd had in almost a week. At least the first one since the deadline when everybody had reported. So I guess you give the edge to Harvey for now and keep an eye on that situation.
I liked all three of them. I like Erceg. I like MacArthur. MacArthur's blown enough saves that he could be someone that's on the hot seat for sure.
Yeah.
These are 15-team leagues that I'm mostly in. So, I'm going to be talking about players that are borderline anyway. But Richie Palacios was dropped in one league. I think that we've talked about how that Tampa situation is just ridiculously hard to figure out.
Yeah, an IL stint for him. They said 4 to 6 weeks for a knee sprain. So it must be like a
Richie Palacios?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Before, when it was just an undetermined like IL stint, it was tempting to want to hold on to him if you needed speed. But now it's, maybe pick him up for the final week if he makes it back or something. But
then how much speed is he also going to give you?
Right. Might not even be taken off as much as he was then. But yeah, 19 for 20 as a base stealer in just 300 plate appearances this year. So there's plenty of speed there. I thought they were going to unlock a little more power with Richie Palacios, and it just hasn't happened.
I picked up Addison Barger in one league, and in that same league, Davis Schneider was dropped. But Davis Schneider has played more than Addison Barger. So I think I'd rather have Davis Schneider. He seems like an everyday player for that team.
Barger is the guy we talked about, I think, as a prospect of the week once upon a time.
And he's interesting, and that's why I have him stashed. Don't have him in my lineup though, because I need to have you playing 5 days out of the week at least before I put you in my weekly lineup. So
yeah, I'm worried that they would use a right-handed bench option to platoon him, and then in weekly leagues you're just a little bit light on playing time with Barger while you see if he can figure it out from a skills perspective. Probably more of a wait and see for me outside of the deepest of leagues.
But from a skills perspective, if you were looking at Joey Loperfido, lefty, Spencer Horwitz, lefty, Addison Barger, lefty, and you knew that perhaps platooning one of them would stunt their ability to develop, which one would you platoon?
Probably would platoon. Wow.
Spencer Horwitz, the oldest one?
Horwitz, because he's the oldest. Yeah, like I think there's less of a chance of him being a special player, even though he might be a good player.
Yeah.
But there's a slightly lower chance for me that he's an above average regular compared to the two.
He's a really interesting player.
They're all risky.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
Yeah. And that's why I think in the end, what will the choice will be that none of them is in a strict platoon. And I don't even think Addison Barger will be in a split platoon. And if one of them starts hitting homers, that you'll see them against lefties. It'll be that simple, because what they're doing in all three of those players is auditioning for the future. Who's going to be on the roster next year? Play your way into it.
Yeah. Horwitz has been consistently good, in terms of limiting strikeouts. I know
that's the hardest one. He's the lowest ceiling, but he's the highest floor, and he's the one that's played the best out of all of them.
Yeah, and he's lifting the ball enough where the barrel rate's not bad, so you kind of can say, oh, maybe there's a little more power with here. He's going to get on base. He can be a table setter, but maybe there's one more thing that he'll still unlock. So there's temptation to try and fit all those guys in the lineup, and maybe it just takes an injury for someone at a position that just makes it possible for all those guys to play all the time down the stretch in Toronto. We are going to head out. On our way out the door, a reminder, you can get a subscription at theathletic.com/ratesandbarrels. $2 a month gets you in the door at The Athletic. Check out all the great coverage we have. Got stuff from the Olympics. We got fantasy football season coming up. We're going to keep you entertained, hopefully, for the final 2 months of baseball season and the postseason as well. All of that for one low price. Theathletic.com/ratesandbarrels. Find Eno on Twitter at Saris. Find me at Derek Van Riper. Find the pod at Rates and Barrels. We are back with you on Tuesday.
Thanks for listening.